Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 49th episode of the Triboro Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Alonso, joined by Nicholas O'Brien. How are you doing, Nicholas O'Brien?
Mickey Mouse.
Shouldn't that only have one ear
For which reason?
over the last 3 days?
I see. Fair enough. But I'm tired. West Coast games are annoying.
I do not like West Coast games either.
And the Mets have another West Coast trip at the end of the month.
Their seventh city in 3 days.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love
Oh.
it. I love it.
He loves it. He loves it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Baseball things. What, dude? This week was a fever dream. I don't even know what happened.
Rain.
Rain.
Lots
Oh my
of rain.
god. Yeah, that was.
Lots of rain.
I don't think I told you this. I may have told you this, but so night crew usually leaves at around midnight. Morning crew usually gets in at 6:30. The rain was so bad and it delayed everything so much that night crew and morning crew passed each other as night crew was leaving. Night crew left at 5:30. Morning crew got there at 5:30.
That's unfortunate.
Luckily, I was neither.
There you go.
Yeah, I got lucky. But
You did.
words and things. Where are we going with this?
Rain.
Rain.
Baseball's back in the Olympics.
Yes, it is.
Yes. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I will. I will admit, I pulled a goofy. I was seeing people put up mock lineups, and I saw the outfield. I'm like, yo, where the fuck is Soto?
Well,
and then I took 5
USA.
seconds. I took 5 seconds to think on it, and I was like, never mind.
Oh, wait a minute.
Never mind.
This is probably going to be a unpopular take. I'm glad that baseball's back. Sorry, I'm thinking something. So if you're watching, don't mind me. But as much as I like that baseball's back and it's great for the sport and everything, major leaguers aren't going to play.
Yeah.
They're not.
I think this happened last time too.
Yeah,
And
I mean, you had 36-year-old Todd Frazier, who was the big name on Team USA.
Who was the captain?
Right. It's cool, but if you think Major League Baseball is going to allow their players to play in the Olympics in the middle of July or end of July, beginning of August, during a time where it's so pivotal that you need all your players, especially for teams look at right now, the Mets, the Braves, the Giants, the Cardinals, everyone's in the middle of that wild card race. You think they're going to let some of those players just pitch elsewhere, play elsewhere? It's not happening.
My only thing is I forget, I think it's hockey. Doesn't hockey have an Olympics break?
I think so.
It could be something like that, a week off. But
yeah, I mean,
who knows?
the thing with hockey too is for the Olympics, hockey's a winter sport. They're done by call it March, April.
Yeah.
So they'll be ready by July. It
Fair.
just the timing just doesn't work. So I think for baseball's case, the best thing is just you got to pump up the World Baseball Classic every 4 years. That's just got to be the big thing because the Olympics just isn't going to work out. It's cool, but
yeah, I saw the lineups. It was people were saying Judge, Witt, and it's these crazy star-studded lineups. And it's just
right,
no.
Yeah, those teams aren't going to let them play. It's unfortunate, but that's reality.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, and honestly, as much as I love the sport, as much as I love USA and everything, I'm not watching college players and washed up MLB veterans play in the Olympics. If you're telling me that you would have watched all the USA basketball games without LeBron, without Curry, without Tatum, without all of those guys, then you're lying to my face.
Yeah, if you're telling me you'd watch all one game that they played because they got knocked out first round, then you're lying.
They won. What do you mean?
No, I'm saying if they didn't have those guys.
Yeah.
If they didn't have those guys, it's a one and done.
Exactly. Right. So, it's unfortunate, but I think that's just the reality.
Yeah. Rock climbing's in the Olympics, and I'm binging that. That's fun. I still have no idea who won stuff. Because I'm watching all the replays. but because I'm not waking up at 4 in the morning when I have a 3 o'clock shift at night, that's just not happening. But baseball,
actual baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball was played, not potential baseball.
Yeah. Just get into it.
Let's get into it.
Into the Bronx.
Now entering the Bronx.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Bronx. Before I get into anything, who right now is the AL MVP? Bobby Witt or Aaron Judge?
No comment.
Make a comment. I asked you a question.
I think it's Judge.
Thank you.
It's Judge.
Thank you. Okay.
I do think it is a good conversation. I don't think it's far and away Judge. If you think Bobby Witt's the MVP, I'm not going to be mad.
I think that there's an argument for Witt, but there's a much stronger one for Judge.
Absolutely. But if you're saying there's no argument whatsoever,
I think there's just a significantly stronger one for Judge. Because you look at all... I'm only mentioning this before anything because this has become such a strongly contested point. Yep. So you look at Baseball Reference. You compare the seasons. Judge has an 8 WAR to Bobby Witt's 7.6. I'm not a big fan of Baseball Reference WAR. You look at Fangraphs, 8.3 for Judge to 8.1 for Witt. So Judge still leading that. Bobby Witt has more hits. Judge has 20 more home runs, 20 more RBIs. Witt obviously beats him in stolen bases. Witt is hitting 347 to Judge's 328. So he's hitting 20 points higher on batting average. Surely the on-base percentage is close, right? Bobby Witt's on-base percentage is 394. Aaron Judge's is 462. He gets on base 70 points higher. So 7% more of the time, which is absurd. His slugging, Bobby Witt, 604. Aaron Judge, 699. His OPS is about 150 points higher, 160 points higher. You look at OPS plus, 219 for Judge, 171 for Bobby Witt. Aaron Judge, 217 WRC plus to Bobby Witt, 171. People are saying that that's not a big difference.
The hitting alone, there's a clear difference, obviously. But they are both different players who arrive at the same amount of value. So at this point, honestly, it's what you value more. Do you value slug or do you value speed and defense?
What's more valued in today's game?
Slug, absolutely. But with the new rules, speed is becoming more important. It's coming back to be more important.
What if Aaron Judge hits 60 home runs again? Breaks the record again? Is there even an argument?
I don't think you can't not give it to him.
Yeah.
But Witt absolutely deserves to be in that conversation.
Oh, he does. I think it's one of those things that he gets absolutely screwed over that Judge is having the year he is. Because I think in 9 out of 10 years he's having an MVP year. Bobby Witt wins the MVP year.
21. If Ohtani wasn't a two-way player, Vlad probably wins MVP in 21.
Yeah, I think that Bobby Witt runs away with the NL MVP. Yeah. I think he just runs away with it. So I don't know. I just don't. There's an argument for Witt, but I just don't think it's nearly strong enough to. I think it's literally 75-25 Judge. That may be a little bit of an over-exaggeration, but...
I would go 60-40. I think it's close.
I think it's close, too. I just don't... With how much, slugging is valued in today's game, and... I don't know, I have a sinking feeling he's not going to get it, though, because because people want to say there's a bias for the Yankees. That's just not true. If anything, there's a bias against the Yankees. Literally look at 2017, where Aaron Judge lapped Altuve in every single stat except batting average and stolen bases. Well, I'm talking lapped by a mile. Didn't get it.
Yeah.
There was an argument about Ohtani versus Judge when Judge had 2 more WAR, even with Ohtani being a two-way player in 2022.
Yeah.
So I have a sick feeling that Bobby Witt's going to get it, even if it is like Judge running away. And everyone talks about Yankee Stadium. Kauffman Stadium is one of the biggest hitter-friendly parks going on in MLB. You look at every single player on the Royals, their home and away splits are absurd.
Yeah.
Is there a little trash banging going on? I don't think so, but you can't rule it out.
No.
There's not. There's not. But it is literally like he has I think a 115 OPS at home and then like a 750 on the road.
Right.
He's
above average away and then a superstar at home.
And I'd be shocked if Judge had any like 1 out of 30 home runs.
I doubt it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like all his home runs are like 30-30s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that's probably like the biggest rant I'm gonna go on. But then getting into the actual series and everything going on, your Triboro injury update brought to you by the Triboro MD. Ian Hamilton threw a bullpen session on Tuesday and Friday. Jose Trevino started a rehab assignment on Sunday, and he was lucky enough to be able to play on the Jersey Diners Day, so he was able to get a jersey. Dude, their lineup card is sick. It's like the coolest thing on the planet. If you haven't seen it, like it's literally like like Diner, kind of like the way like on the pad it's written in like the cursive or whatever. That's how like the lineup card is, and it should just be on the Somerset Patriots Twitter. You see it?
I'm looking it up now.
No, I think that collection overall was just a home run of a collection. I think that was just, and even funny enough, when I was walking around like working, I saw a little kid with a Jersey Diners hat on.
Ah, amazing.
Yeah, incredible. But then moving on, Cody Petit, you see it?
I see it now. I love that.
Right, that's awesome. Cody Petit threw 25 pitches in a live bullpen session on Saturday. Clark Schmidt will throw a rehab assignment. I don't know why this is said. He'll throw a rehab assignment around August 22nd. You give an exact date, but then say around it.
Interesting.
Like, I'm surprised they didn't say, like, mid to late August.
Right.
Or like just, the second or third week of August or something.
Couple weeks.
Yeah. Around August.
Interesting.
Oh, I just thought that wording was weird.
Yeah.
Anthony Rizzo hit full force recently off the Tragic, however you say it, pitching machine that can emulate pitchers. I am very interested to see what they do with him.
Definitely.
Because I can't remember if I talked about it on here, but we know nothing about concussions. Like, as a whole society, we know absolutely nothing about concussions, and we know they could have long-lasting effects. So who's to say that when you have a concussion for 2 months, and you play for those 2 months full tilt, that there's not long-lasting effects?
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, unfortunately.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with him there.
It's just a wait and see.
Yeah. But then, Clark, I mentioned, I think there's a very strong argument that Nestor and Stroman are kind of auditioning now to whoever keeps that 5 spot for when Clark comes back. Because they're kind of both just the redheaded stepchild. They're both just not playing well whatsoever. Nestor Cortez has a tweet about how the Yankees, how it's like everyone wants to be them. And then since then, he's been one of the worst pitchers in the American League or in baseball in general.
Quite funny.
Going to his last start, it is funny. His last start, he had 4 2/3 innings pitched, 9 hits, 6 earned runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. I will say, did you see the 1 hit I think it was Zach Neto had?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This ball is It was a righty hitting. This ball is behind a lefty.
Oh.
I'm not exaggerating when I say this ball was a good 6-7 feet off the plate, and it was looped in for a base clearing double.
Oh shit.
He did get screwed by that, but he also just
Yeah.
did not pitch well whatsoever.
Right.
He had an 80% fly ball rate.
Ooh.
Yeah. I think it was like
80, no.
4 ground balls to 15 fly balls. The math may not be perfect. I just eyeballed that, so maybe like give or take a percent or two, but
Yeah.
not good. Then Marcus Stroman, his last start, 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 1 K. That was like the only good start he's had in like 2 months. I don't know what they do. I'm curious what you think they do.
I think the easier answer is to maybe, I don't know, because my gut is just like, well, let me start off with this. I think the easier answer is to kind of move around Cortez rather than Stroman. So whether that's my gut feeling of, throw him in the bullpen, or because I'm checking in 2 seconds.
What are you checking?
He doesn't have options, so never mind. But I think either bullpen or Phantom IL. I think you would rather take out Cortez, or I think he's easier to take out rather than Stroman. I think Stroman's gonna figure it out. He's a ground ball pitcher. As long as he gets his ground balls, he'll be fine. But obviously, that hasn't been the case. So I think he has a better and maybe easier chance of turning it around than Nestor does. So I think Nestor's the odd man out of the two.
I see it both ways, where the thing with Nestor is that I think he does have more flexibility. But the thing with Stroman is that there's a lot of signs that kind of point to him being fatigued. So I would almost rather Phantom IL him.
Right.
But because I also think that Nestor being able to just have him in the bullpen then like only throw him at home during the playoffs, I think that plays a lot better.
Yeah.
But it also could be a bad thing because you're going from say that Cole or Heel are starting, so you're seeing like 97, 98, 99 miles an hour, and then you go to Nestor who's throwing 90.
Right.
That could also be a very bad thing. But
yeah, it could be good, it could be bad. It depends.
I also just don't see how either of them make the playoff rotation.
As of right now, absolutely not.
I don't see how either of them do. Because then kind of going into a point on Luis Heel, he has 15 starts this season with 1 or fewer runs allowed. That is by far the most in baseball. I think second is like 12.
Right.
So he had that bump of like 3 or 4 games where he was god-awful, but he's been significantly better as of late. I just don't see a world where because the only other option really would be him, and maybe Clark, but I just don't see how they keep Heel out of the playoff rotation. How can you?
My only concern with Heel is just the innings, obviously. It's he's surpassed like the complete 2-3 years worth
blowing past
right.
it.
So, knock on wood, but come September, how's he looking? I think that's going to be the biggest thing. I think depending how his September goes, I think will decide whether he makes the rotation or not for the playoffs. Because you can also use him in the bullpen.
Yeah. The only thing with him in the bullpen is he will walk a couple guys. His control has been wonky as of late, and I almost don't want that now.
That's fair. Yeah.
And I also... The thing with the innings, I forget who it was, but someone on the broadcast said that it was a really interesting point that I never thought about, that looking at innings for fatigue is almost like an archaic way of looking at it. Because now they have so many like metrics and like different ways to quantify if a guy's fatigued, that innings aren't the end all be all. Granted, they do play a part because obviously
Yeah.
throwing innings is how you get fatigued, but
Right.
it was
There's
a
more
very
to it.
interesting. Yeah, then just like innings kind of, not that they don't really look at them, but they look at a lot more things with a lot more. They pay attention a lot more to other things than innings.
Yeah, absolutely, and that makes sense. But my point still stands. And like, come September, he lost a mile and a half off his fastball.
Mm-hmm.
His slider isn't breaking as much.
Mm-hmm.
I think stuff like that is what more they're looking for if they're
Yeah.
looking past innings. So, I think the playoff rotation will decide itself come September. I think.
I think so too. And hey, if a slider's not breaking, you just sit down and lose Severino again. But
Yeah,
then
exactly.
staying on the. Did you have anything else on the rotation or anything?
No.
So then moving on to the bullpen, which I have in the past not really talked about the bullpen. I'll talk about it a little, touch on a little.
Yeah.
The last two games were absolutely fucking god awful. So Garrett Cole, who they were saying maybe dealing with fatigue because of the sickness, whatever, which I think a lot of people are freaking out too much about it. How many, I want everyone listening to think about this. When you've been sick in your life, how many times will you still feel like a little bit fatigued a week or two later?
Mm.
And that's for you doing your everyday job. Imagine
Yeah.
being an athlete who any little thing that is wrong with you will just be overblown because they need to be sure about it.
Right.
So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But he went 5 1/3, 6 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, 10 strikeouts. He was disgusting, absolutely filthy at one point. I think he could have gone longer. I probably agree with taking him out. He was at 90 pitches, just because the fatigue, all that. So I don't really care that they took him out, especially considering what Luke Weaver did. Just is god awful, because before getting into it, he only had to get 2 outs, and so made a good point of what's the difference of Luke Weaver getting 2 outs in the 6th or 3 in the 7th?
Right.
You know what I mean? He's gonna come in regardless. Yeah. So it's just a little bit earlier. Yeah. But this is what he did. Single, 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 walk, sac fly, 3-run home run. What was a 1-1 game became a 6-1 game. And he didn't even get out of the inning.
Yikes. It just can't happen.
That guy's supposed to be your number 2, number 3 guy in the bullpen. Then getting into the guy who would be the guy you would argument for number 2, number 3. Jack Leiter came in on Sunday's game in the 8th inning of an 8-3 game. Strikeout, home run, strikeout, walk, 2-run home run, double. To make it 8-6. Then comes Clay Holmes in he also had to get the last out in the 8th inning because Leiter couldn't get that, so he ended up getting ground out. In the 9th inning, strikeout, walk, RBI single, stolen base, so there's runners on second and third in a 1-run game. He ends up getting the ground out second, but I will say he did get a little bit screwed over by Jazz. Did you see that play?
Mm-hmm. Was that the tag play?
Yeah. So
yeah, I did see that.
There was a guy on first and second. There was a ball that Soto dived for, made an incredible catch. It just came out when he made contact with the ground. Then whoever it was that was yelling at him, that was very heads up, he throws the ball in. Ball goes to third. Jazz's ankle was barely off the bag, so he went for the swipe. I don't know if it was a thing of he didn't know the situation, he didn't know it was a force play, or whatever.
Yeah.
I think he didn't know it was a force play, because he literally had to move his ankle a 1/4 of an inch to the left, or to the right, and then it was an out. But regardless, as a closer, like, that shouldn't be the end-all, be-all. Like, that shouldn't... I don't know what needs to happen with him. He has blown 6 out of his last 12 saves. And if he blew that one, it would have been 7 out of the last 12. So, what do you do with him?
I think if he's struggling
as the biggest
this much,
Clay Holmes truther that we have.
yeah, exactly. If he's struggling this much, and the unfortunate part is that a lot of the bullpen is also struggling as of late, so there's not really a lot of great options to turn to. But regardless, if he's struggling this much, maybe you do more of a committee rather than, hey, Clay, you're our guy. And like, you don't need to kind of, I don't know if this is gonna sound scummy or not, but like, you don't need to express that to him. Like, hey, we're taking away like your role. Like, you just be like, oh, we need you in the 8th today. You know, the middle of the lineup's coming up in the 7th. We need you for the 7th. Like, you know, you don't need to like word it in a way that's like, we're gonna take you away from this spot. Yeah. It's more of, hey, this is an important spot. We want you here. Mm-hmm. So I think if they do something more like that, maybe allow him to get his bearings a little more, that might be a good idea.
On the flip side, though, there are guys that are closers that just perform worse when not in the 9th inning.
That is true, yeah.
So, just, I don't think he's that type of guy, but definitely something to note.
I'll look into it quick if I can find it.
Well, I was going to move on, so now we're going to do that, and then you're going to take 10 years.
Can talk about it, and if I find it...
I don't have anything else to say! What else more is there to say? He's dog shit!
What, just move on.
No. If you want to try and find it, find it. I've been stalling for the last, 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds, thank you.
Yeah.
Oof, what would I do without my 30 seconds?
Oh my fucking god. We're canceling the podcast. We're canceling this shit. I can't stand you anymore.
You're seeing it live.
You're seeing it live, yeah. Live, even though if this really was a cancellation, this wouldn't be posted.
True.
Alright, you find it yet?
Hold on.
Oh my god.
Chill out.
This is riveting content. Riveting content for the people that are listening.
Amazing.
Riveting. I'm sorry. He's supposed to be a big stat guy, but can't even find this.
In the 8th inning, he has a 3.6 ERA. In the 9th, he has a 2.7. In extras, he has a 2.7.
Is that this year or in his career?
That is this year.
Check his career. Actually, no, don't check his career because it won't matter. Because what's it called? Because of his fucking
Pittsburgh days.
Yeah, but even the extra innings, I feel, are kind of misleading.
Yeah, those are more like closing roles.
Because if you look at the extra innings, how many runs has he given up compared to earned runs? If that's there. Because for those that
innings, yeah.
Because for those that don't know, or you finish.
4 runs, but it doesn't say how many are earned.
Okay. For those that don't know, the ghost runner does not count as an earned run, so it wouldn't count against your ERA. Yeah, I don't know what you do with them though.
I think you just do like a little committee. I think that's the best way to go about it. If you don't want him in the 9th inning, if you can deal with it, obviously leave him in. But if you need to take him out of the 9th inning, if you feel like that's going to be the best spot for him, I say you go committee.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. In non-save situations, he has a 2.4 ERA in 15 innings compared to a 3 ERA in save situations in 33 innings.
Okay.
So, not much of a difference. If anything, he's better.
Interesting. So. But then moving on. So, for the cleanup spot, I don't understand what they're doing. Like, I get it, but I don't at the same time. So they've been having Stan back clean off the last couple days instead of Austin Wells. Even when Wells is playing, they'll have Wells 5th. I just think that split. Like, I will say this: there is an argument, especially after yesterday's game, because Judge got intentionally walked. Then Stan hit a 3-run home run to punish them for it.
Yeah.
But I also think that Wells had like a 950 OPS while at cleanup. We're like, yeah, Stanton could be better than that, but that's asking a lot for him to be better at. Especially when you saw earlier in the year he wasn't that. Not that he wasn't that good at cleanup, but he wasn't He was like 800 OPS, which is good. It's really good.
Yeah.
But not 950 OPS, which is significantly better. So
That is true.
obviously, you know my opinion on who should be the cleanup hitter. What do you think? Should it be Wells or should it be Stanton?
I don't hate that they're kind of platooning the cleanup spot. I don't mind it. I'm trying to, because for the season, Austin Wells is a below average hitter against lefties.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see if I could find it like since
Or
earlier.
like as the cleanup hitter.
Right, but what's it called? I don't hate that they're platooning the cleanup spot. As long as Wells is in the lineup and he's 4th or 5th or whatever, I don't mind that at all.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think that it was doing so well with him 4. Why mess with it?
That's fair.
Like, it could be better. Who knows? But so why mess with it type thing?
Yeah.
Fuck
you. He's out of the goddamn qualified range. Fuck you, Wells. 1 plate appearance. Okay. Since the past 30 days, Austin Wells has a 123 WRC plus against lefties.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Stan has an 85.
Yeah.
So when you look at this, then Austin Wells should be a cleanup hitter no matter what.
Yeah.
Oh.
What?
Interesting. Austin Wells has a 123 WRC plus against lefties. But he is slugging 231. And he's hitting 231. He only has singles against lefties.
What's his on base?
But his on base is 444.
Yeah.
So he's getting carried by the on base percentage.
Mm.
For a cleanup hitter, I would rather the slug.
Fair. Okay.
So after looking at this, I think I would still not mind platooning the cleanup spot.
Fair. Then kind of just 1-2 quick last notes. I am known as a big Gleyber Torres fan. He is pissing me off defensively. Not for making errors. Not like that obviously does get under my skin. But he just doesn't know his assignment. Mm-hmm. There's been multiple times where he'll like cut in front of Volpe to try and make a play.
Yeah.
And even if he does make the play, cool, but it's significantly harder play than if Volpe were just to either go get the ball, then toss it to Gleyber, because if they're both going for a play, and there's a guy there's a force out to be made at second base, and no one's covering second base, then how is there going to be an out made? You're making the much harder throw to first base. But I think that's a lot more troublesome than him just making errors. Just him not knowing his assignment.
Yeah, him getting in the way.
Yeah. Him getting in the way of a guy that is, if it wasn't for Bobby Witt, would be like arguably the Platinum Glove winner.
Right.
So
that reminds me a lot about Alonso. As a first baseman, he loves going to his right and diving for balls that a second baseman can probably, like McNeil can probably just get to.
Mm.
And it's so frustrating because he makes the play that much harder, if not, impossible to make. Because then, like in your case, no one's covering second. In Alonso's case, then you have to rely on the pitcher getting over to first to then make the play. Like, you're just making it that much harder. It's kind of just stay in your spot. Both Gleyber and Alonso, I know 2 different positions, aren't fantastic defenders.
Yeah.
Just let the ball come at you. Don't wander across the field to make a play. Like, just trust your guys. Trust your teammates.
Yeah.
Let them make the play.
Especially more in Gleyber's case when you have such an incredible defender. that would be making the play.
Exactly.
But regardless, one kind of quick thing I wanted to talk about was Brian Cashman talked about Jason Dominguez. I'm not going to read the entire quote, but pretty much he said he's healthy, and if they played him, he would probably get played in left field or center field, which is something that I was kind of curious what they would do. But then the one thing is there's currently no lane for us to bring him. It's nice to know he's there. He's just knocking rust off and waiting for his opportunity if it comes. I don't know how I feel about it because Verdugo has been playing better the last couple games. But is that also one of those things of he buys himself 3 months because he has one good game or like one stretch of a couple games?
Yeah.
I think what happens is I don't know what the exact date is, but I know that like if he's a September call-up, he maintains rookie eligibility for next year. So I think that's probably what they're going for. They're probably just waiting until then they call him up. So
maybe.
You were going to say something.
I mean, yeah, because the other thing too is there's no guarantee that he's better than Verdugo if you call him up. You know, you could call him up and he can be just disastrous, and he could possibly be worse. With Verdugo, I know he's had his peaks and valleys, but at one point he's going to be consistent. If that's below average, it is what it is, but at least it's consistent. You know what I mean?
My only two counterpoints is that, one, outside of the last couple of games, how much worse could he be than Verdugo? And I think he just brings a speed element that if you have him, Dominguez, him, Volpe, and Jazz, and kind of like that back end of that lineup, all with speed, like that's trouble. And that's also, fair. I think with how Verdugo's been defensively lately, I would rather the guy that just has the better range defensively.
Fair.
And the switch hitter, more versatility, whatever, that. I don't know. I think Verdugo has like 2 weeks to prove he belongs. And if he doesn't, or 2-3 weeks, whatever it is. And if he doesn't, like, sayonara, like, get ready to learn Cabo, buddy.
That's fair. Yeah, I think come September, Dominguez is probably getting called up. I think
he definitely is. Because you get the extra roster spot, and I don't see who else they call up over him.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what they're looking at.
Especially
that's kind of
with
their deadline.
Especially with Jazz just being a third baseman.
Right.
Like,
you don't need
he's just a third baseman now, which is okay.
Insane.
Like, what? That's just... I think he's, like, misplayed 1 or 2 balls, but that's to be expected for a guy that's never played third base before in his life.
Right. And so far, he is not tracked yet, so never mind.
So far, he has...
Wait, I lied. He has 2 outs above average at third base.
For never playing it before in your life, and he's been playing it for about 2 weeks.
Right.
That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's about all I got. Yeah. If you have anything else you wanted to
add? Not really. I think Yankees play the White Sox next, right?
Yeah, White Sox and Tigers. They play in Williamsport against Tigers.
I forgot about that.
Oh.
That'll be fun. That'll be cool.
Sweep the fucking White Sox.
Yeah, take care of business. Do your thing.
Let's just sweep them. Yeah. Aaron Judge is on... I didn't even mention this. Aaron Judge has 299 career home runs. If he hits 300, he'd get to 300 like 200 games faster than anyone else in MLB history. Which is crazy. But, yeah.
Yeah, all right.
If you got nothing else,
that's all you got. Then we'll move on to Queens.
Now entering Queens.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Queens, where the Mets have finished up their long, grueling, brutal, did I mention long, road trip. This obviously last week we talked about their series in Anaheim. Bless you.
That was a burp.
I know. But this week they had to make a stop at St. Louis to make up a game from May. Then they moved on to Colorado, and then they went to Seattle. So it was just a long road trip that I'm sure the players were just not looking forward to. But we'll get into that in a little bit. But of course, first and foremost, your injury report brought to you by a Triboro MD. Reed Garrett was activated over the weekend. Alex Young was optioned over a possible DFA of Adam Ottavino. Alex Young, in 9 innings for the Mets, pitched to a 1 ERA with a 2.40 FIP and a 3.73 expected ERA. I don't like the move. I think Ottavino should have been DFA'd. I think he has a lot of red bubbles on Savant. I was going to make a case for him until Sunday night's game, which kind of sealed the deal for me. Like I mentioned, Alex Young was optioned. You now only have one lefty in that bullpen in Danny Young. I'm not sure why Danny Young wasn't optioned when Alex Young has been the better Young. Danny Young has incredible stuff. I think that's not really an argument, but he has no command whatsoever. But like I mentioned, Adam Ottavino stayed. This year he has pitched to a 4.43 ERA in 42 innings.
That's not updated.
No, it's not updated.
He has a 4.78 ERA.
Yeah, because he blew up on Sunday night. So it's even worse now. But regardless, a 3.11 expected ERA, a 3.43 FIP. Since June, he has a 3.38 ERA with a 3.27 FIP. Good numbers. Solid. Obviously, that's nothing to scoff at. But the big thing with Ottavino, you can't pitch him in high leverage situations. He has a 5 ERA there. You can't pitch him in medium leverage situations. He has a 5.63 ERA there. A single turns into a double. He cannot keep runners on. Runners, throughout his entire career, this isn't new. Justin, you know this. He can base runners, steal everything off of him. You can't pitch him on back-to-back days. With 0 days of rest, he has an 8.31 ERA and 8.2 innings pitched. And he can't get lefties out, as lefties have hit 307 with a 1.002 OPS against him. I understand you need someone to throw those quote-unquote low-leverage situations. Whether it's a blowout in either direction, someone needs to pitch those innings. Ottavino has been that guy. But he doesn't give you anything. If there's a lefty up, they're getting on base, if not hitting a home run. If you pitch him on back-to-back days, he's giving up runs. He gives up a single, it's a double. He gives up the double, it's a triple. He doesn't have a spot here. You limit yourself keeping Ottavino in this bullpen when he can pitch in basically one scenario. A low leverage spot against right-handed hitters. If that's not the case, you cannot bring him in. So, I don't understand what the Mets are doing here. I think like I said, he's been solid since June, but again, you're limiting yourself with the opportunities that he can pitch in, which are very limited.
I've been trying to find, while you're talking, a slowest time to plate. I can't, unfortunately, but I would bet the Ottavino is top 5.
I'm sure he's up there. Yeah, he's definitely up there. But the one other thing that pisses me off the most is, I think it was, he was talking to the New York Post about it. He said, and I quote, "It would be foolish for the Mets to let him go." I guess I'm a fool.
I was going to say, call me a fool.
Call me a fool, because he needs to go.
Get ready to learn driveline, buddy.
Lefties. Can't pitch in high leverage situations. Can't pitch against lefties. I already said that. Can't pitch back to back.
I think you had to say that twice, though.
Yes,
because that's how big Midwell was.
Right, he cannot get lefties out to save his life. He is so limited in where he can pitch that it doesn't make sense to keep him there.
Get ready to learn, get the last out of the inning, and then not come back in, buddy.
Literally. But fortunately for the Mets, they have Daniel Nunez, who was expected to throw a bullpen session on Sunday. Didn't hear any other reports after that, so hopefully everything went well. And Sean Reed-Foley is described as very close to returning. They want him to pitch on, I believe, back-to-back days, multiple innings. So once those two guys come back, if Ottavino isn't let go, then I don't know what else to tell you. But Ottavino needs to go. He has overstayed his welcome. And he's a good guy. I love hearing him talk about pitching and all that, but he's chaining down this bullpen because you're playing with almost down a guy because he can't pitch in more than 2 situations at most. But after those 3 guys I mentioned, Starling Marte, he's on track. He's played 3 games in single A so far. They want him to play back-to-back days in right field. It's expected to be Tuesday and Wednesday, so maybe he'll be activated sometime Thursday or for the weekend series against the Marlins. And then Christian Scott, he's likely to be cleared for a throwing program soon. Christian Scott's dealing with that sprained UCL. They're going the rehab route rather than surgery. So him progressing is always good to see. Hopefully he can come back, call it in a month if everything goes well. And, kind of help this Mets team down the stretch. But that's your injury report. I know obviously you had a little discussion about Ottavino there, but just had...
I was going to say, I completely forgot that was the injury report.
Yeah, exactly. It had to be said. Yeah. But onto the road trip. So I just looked at this because it was just... This scheduling was so bizarre. And I understand the St. Louis makeup game kind of threw a wrench into things. So they first went to Anaheim, which is obviously a 3-hour time difference from New York. They then went to St. Louis, which is
2-hour time difference.
2-hour time difference from Anaheim. Then they went to Colorado, which is an hour difference from St. Louis. And then they went back to Seattle, which is the West Coast, which is another hour difference. So they traveled 3 time zones in the matter of a week. Well, I understand it's travel. That's part of the game. It's kind of part of being a baseball player, a professional athlete in general. But thanks, Siri. But you cannot look at me and tell me that this travel schedule did not mess with the players in general.
It didn't.
It's not an excuse because they completely laid an egg in Seattle.
I wouldn't say that. An egg is 0.
Might as well have laid an egg. They laid an egg with a Sharpie markered 1. But that's a brutal schedule. That's absolutely brutal. And to top things off, Seattle is such a tough place to hit. And then ESPN wants the game. So then it's an earlier start. It's a 7 o'clock start here in New York. It was a 4 o'clock start there in Seattle. The sun, the shadows was absolutely brutal. They talked about it the entire broadcast, which was unbearable, by the way. Might as well have been a Mariners broadcast. About, the shadows and the batter's eye and how Seattle's already a tough place to hit, and then you add all that, and then you're facing Luis Castillo, and then it's the last game of the road trip, and yada, 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 yada. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses, but I am trying to put it into perspective that it was a very tough series in Seattle and trip overall. They went 4-6 for that stretch.
I just want to say 3 things. 1, the ESPN broadcast would be absolutely unlistenable if it wasn't for David Cohn. 2, Seattle, to your point, is ranked as the hardest place to hit in MLB as the lowest park factor. 3, close the goddamn roof. You have a retractable
Yeah.
roof for a reason. Use it.
Exactly. I don't understand why they didn't do that. But again, it's kind of like that home field advantage thing. Obviously, the
Yes, home
Mariners.
field advantage to the point where you can't see the fucking baseball.
Right, but the Seattle players have played in there. They kind of have a better understanding of it. You know what I mean? Like the Mets haven't played there, I think, since 2017 or something like that. When a lot of these players on this team right now either A, weren't on the Mets, or B, weren't even in the majors. So you have a lot of guys who just didn't have experience with that. And it showed. So it's very frustrating. I know you play with the hand that you're dealt, but they were dealt a pretty shit hand. So just a recap of the road trip. They lost 2 out of 3 against Anaheim. They won the game in St. Louis, which was probably one of the bigger games on the road trip, because you now hold the tiebreaker over the Cardinals if they would end up in a tie at the end of the season. If they were fighting for a playoff spot, the Mets would get the edge over the Cardinals because they won this season series. You took 2 out of 3, Colorado. I didn't know this. It was Luis Severino's first start in Coors Field,
Yeah.
which I guess makes sense. And obviously, Coors is it's the complete opposite of Seattle, which is another thing too. You go from the most friendly hitter park, it's either that or Cincinnati, to the absolute
It's Colorado.
least.
It's Colorado.
I'm sure it's Colorado. Yeah, to the absolute least hitter-friendly park. So that has to be such a whiplash of a change that I'm sure. Because I think they always call it like the Coors hangover. I think like after playing Coors, like it's tough to readjust.
I would bet it's
immediately.
because of the altitude rather than the actual field itself.
That's
Just
fair.
because
Yeah.
if anyone's ever been to Colorado, like they know, the second day you're there is horrible. It's not the first day you're there. The first day you're there, you're fine, but when you sleep on it, the second day you feel like dog shit. It's called mountain sickness. And then also when you go back to wherever you're from or go to another place, you have to like readjust everything, and like you need like
Right.
a day or two to readjust. So there is something to that.
Right. So you have that as well. And
But
then
this is
in
coming from
Seattle,
a guy that goes to Colorado once a year.
right, that is also true. And then obviously in Seattle, they got swept. It was just a horrible series. They had a 24 inning scoreless streak. They got shut out in game 1 and game 2, and if it wasn't for Jeff McNeil's solo shot in game 3, they would have gotten shut out all 3 games. So very tough. It was so frustrating. And look, you end the weekend half a game out of the wild card spot, the last wild card spot. But the Diamondbacks and the Padres are now the best teams in baseball, especially since the break. They just do not lose. I believe both of them are 8-2 in their last 10 games. So both of them are tied for wild card 1. So wild card 1 and 2 are both up 4 games. So the Mets are 4.5 games behind for wild card 2 and 1. And the Braves lost the series to Colorado, and Sunday's game would have been such a nice game to just kind of get and just, kind of end this road trip on a high note because it was just so brutal. But Luis Severino has been pretty bad since the All-Star break. He looked good until I think it was the 5th inning, where he had 2 outs, runner on third, slow hit ground ball to Lindor by Arozarena. Lindor gets it, loses it on the transfer, run scores. The very next pitch, Cal Riley hits a 2-run home run. Quickly, it becomes 4-0 Mariners. And even when it was 1-0, it felt like it was so much larger of a lead and so much larger of a deficit to come back from, because that's just how bad this offense has been. Forget about the road trip since the beginning of since they got back from the All-Star break, I should say. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I was frustrated. I haven't been frustrated with this team in quite a while. I guess since May, really. And for good reason. They've been really good in June. They've been really good in July. This is the first sweep since they got swept by the Dodgers at the end of May. So I haven't had much to get frustrated at, but I'd be lying if I didn't say I was very frustrated after this series. But can't really hang your head. They thankfully have a much needed off day today on Monday, where they can just get back, hopefully relax, recalibrate. But just a brutal road trip. Justin, what are your thoughts? You outside looking in, 4-6 road trip. Obviously, a lot of travel. Not where you want to be. You lost a lot of ground in the wild card standings for 1 and 2 at least, but you're still half a game back in wild card 3.
I will say, for Colorado, as dog shit as the Rockies are, it is very hard to play there, for a couple of different reasons. But yeah, you lost ground, but don't you play like all the teams? Like you play all these teams, so it's not like it's all Mets are done. Like you still have about month and 2/3 left, and on top of that, you play all the teams, so you have ample time. And at the end of the day, it's half a game.
Right.
It is literally the difference between playing a game and not playing a game for being tied for that third wildcard spot.
Right. I think the Braves play tonight. The Mets don't. So if the Braves lose, they're tied.
And didn't the Braves just lose someone, like injury-wise?
Did they? They've lost so many guys.
They've lost so many people that it's just...
Yeah, it's been pretty brutal for them. As much as I, love seeing their downfall, it's been extremely brutal for the Braves. They have not had it easy whatsoever. But yeah, like you mentioned, they do play basically all of the teams that they're kind of looking up at. So really quick to go over the schedule for the next, call it 3 weeks. They start a homestand tomorrow, 9-game homestand, 3 against the Oakland Athletics, 3 against the Miami Marlins, and then 3 against the Baltimore Orioles. They have to, because of the spot they've put themselves in now, there is very little margin for error. Yes, you only half a game back. Yes, you play all the teams, but you have another bad stretch. The Braves have a good stretch. The Padres keep going. The Diamondbacks keep going. You're going to be looking up from a lot lower. So you have to take care of business against the A's and the Marlins. Gotta pull out a win against the Orioles. Orioles, obviously, very, very.
No, you need to sweep
team.
them. You need to sweep them.
Yes, I'm sure you would love that.
You need to sweep them.
It is not happening.
It is happening.
Maybe a series win, but this Mets team, how it is performing right now, is incapable of sweeping any team.
Well, if the Yankees get swept, then you sweep the Orioles.
Sure.
Because whatever the fucking Yankees do, the Orioles do. Whatever the Orioles do, the Yankees do. It's so infuriating. They've been tied like 15 times for the last month.
No, it's pretty...
This is the Mets part, though, not the Yankees part.
Yeah, exactly.
I've already had my say.
Shush. Shut. But, just get home, recalibrate, take it from there. After that 9-game homestand, like Justin mentioned, you do play a lot of the wild card teams. Another West Coast trip. It's fantastic. I don't understand the scheduling.
What's that? 3 West Coast trips?
That's
their third one
for the season. I think that's 3. But first 2 weeks of August, West Coast. You get a week break. The next week, West Coast. Or like the last 2 weeks of West Coast. Like, I don't understand the schedule. But regardless, 10 games on the road, 4 against the San Diego Padres, 3 against the Diamondbacks, and then 3 against the White Sox. Those 7 games between the Padres and the Diamondbacks went from hey, maybe they can jump them in the standings, or hey, maybe they can, keep pace, to now, if you lose that series, if you lose any of those series, that's going to be a lot more damaging compared to, say, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, with where they were. Very least, you have to split with the Padres. I believe if they win one game against the Padres, because they swept them at home in June, that they have the season series over the Padres. So at least split. So obviously no ground is made up, but technically you kind of have a game edge if you do win that game because of the tiebreaker. So if you split against the Padres, you're in a good spot. The Diamondbacks are a different story because they split with them. I think it was May going into June. They split a 4-game series at Citi Field. So this is a series you need to win. This is a series you need to pull out because you lose the series, A, you lose ground, and B, you lose the tiebreaker. These 7 games have just become much more important than they were 2 weeks ago. Is it fair to say? Go ahead. Yeah, you have something.
No, because I was gonna say something different. You go.
Okay. Is it fair to say that if they have a poor stretch against these 7 games, that you can kind of say that, all right, maybe it's a little over?
Yeah. Because you're not saying it's 100% over, but it is. But what I was gonna say is, do not, under any circumstance, let Adam Ottavino pitch to Jock Peterson in that Diamondback series.
Oh my God.
I did not know this, but Jock Peterson has been one of the best hitters in baseball this year.
Yeah.
He has like a 170 WRC plus. And I have
he
not
already
heard
kills the Mets.
And I have not heard his name once.
Yeah.
And
I mean, at the end of the day, he's a glorified platoon bat. But still, when he plays, he's fantastic. But he already kills the Mets.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best players against righties. I hope to God that somehow Sean Manaea, Jose Quintana, and David Peterson are all lined up for that Diamondback series. So we don't need to face fucking
Jock Peterson.
But yeah, these games have just become that much more important to these Mets' hopes and dreams. And then after that, I believe in September, I'm going to pull it up quickly now. They do play the Braves. I think it's like 3 games against the Braves. In September, yeah, the second to last series in the season, they play a 3-game set in Atlanta. So if they keep pace with the Braves, at the very least, if they keep pace with the Braves up until September, that series is a must-win. But that's looking far ahead. You got to beat the Padres and the Diamondbacks now. So my silver lining, my positive outlook on this is get the slump over now. Kind of work through whatever's aching and ailing, because once you head west again, you have to lock in. Like, this is the time that they need to show up. Yeah. And unfortunately, this core of players, when the lights are the brightest and the games matter the most, they haven't shown up. So if you're going to, try to change that narrative, I'm looking at that West Coast trip. But you have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Until we get there. So, let's look at what's happening now. Brandon Nimmo has been god-awful since the All-Star break. He's been awful.
Because he was depressed he wasn't an All-Star.
August. Maybe, no. Honestly, though, wouldn't be shocked. But, so, what's going wrong with Brandon Nimmo? How did he become one of the worst hitters in baseball after being a should-be All-Star for 2 months? Well, he's not hitting the ball hard. He has a 36 hard hit percentage since the All-Star break. He's barely pulling the ball at 32%. Excuse me. He is hitting too many ground balls, 50% ground ball rate, and he's striking out way too much at 30%. He said it himself. Brandon Nimmo and Lindor, really, are two guys that will kind of, when they suck, they know it, and they aren't afraid to say it. Kind of very similar to how Stanton is with the
Yeah.
Yankees. Like, if he sucks, he'll stand in front of the media and be like, yeah, I suck. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not helping the team right now. So Brandon Nimmo's that guy. He said it, I think, like 2 days ago. He knows he's slumping. He knows he has to work through it. But they kept penciling him at that 2 hole. I'm wondering how much longer they allow him to stay there. It's like, all right, I'm going to ask you a question, Justin.
Yeah.
Because I would want them to change the lineup. I think they got to switch it around. After having something that's worked for, call it 2 months, a month and a half, like basically from June to July, and now all of a sudden it's not working. You got shut out for 24 innings. You scored 1 run in a 3-game series. Been struggling for what? It's been how many weeks since the All-Star break?
Almost a month.
3, yeah.
4.
All
I'd
3
say
weeks.
4.
4 weeks, a month, call it. Do you think it's fair to say they should change the lineup, or do you kind of stick with what worked in the past? What worked for 2 months over what has been working for the past month?
Well, I think it's also a thing of when it's not just Nimmo. Because like you said,
Right.
Alonso, like, you cannot stand Alonso at cleanup. So if it's 2 of the top 4 guys, like, something's got to be done. Like,
And
look at the Yankees.
Martinez
They
as well.
DFA'd their leadoff hitter and their cleanup hitter. But
Yeah.
that was a joke. But no, if it's not working, change it up.
Yeah, I think that's fair because you said 3 out of your top 4 guys. It's 3 out of your top 4 guys. Nimmo's been struggling. GD Martinez has been average at best. Pete Alonso cannot get a hit with runners in scoring position. And Lindor has been fine. He's been steady. He hasn't been great as of late, but he's been steady.
What would you do? Because I think I know what I would do.
I think Marte possibly returning this week can be huge.
I didn't even think about him.
I think if if you're not changing anything now, you're changing things when Marte gets back. And if Nimmo is still struggling, I think Marte, you place him in that 2 hole immediately. So you go Lindor, Marte. After that, I think I'd like to see McNeil. McNeil has been your best hitter since the All-Star break. At the same time, he's been doing good where he's been hitting, which is around like 4, 6, 7. 5, 6, 7. But I think Lindor, Marte, McNeil. I think you stick JD and clean up because
Who else?
exactly. Who else? I think Vientos. I said it. I think it was last week. Has been great with runners in scoring position since the break. Obviously, Alonso has been horrid the entire year. Alvarez has been awful for the past month. So I think JD clean up because at the very least he'll strike out if runners are on, or he'll fly out or something. He grounds into his fair share of double plays, but I feel like it's not a ton. So I think I could live with JD at 4. I think you go Pete at 5. I hate putting Nimmo so low. Like Nimmo 6, but he's been brutal. So like I don't know where else to put him. That's the issue.
I was thinking of someone without Marte. I was thinking you just go Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo, Martinez. Get weird with it.
Okay. I think earlier in the year, I think they tried Alonso at 2.
Like, I'd say just get
Like,
weird with it, because if they're not doing well, but you still want them to be in your top 4, top 5, then you have McNeil at 5, because you said he's been
yeah,
hitting well at 5. So
yeah.
get weird with it.
I think that's fair. I think another thing that could be that I've seen a lot of and could be interesting is Lindor Vientos 1-2, because Vientos has been a better hitter than Alonso. Vientos, as an entire season, has been better with runners in scoring position. But I don't know. It's definitely it's a tough conversation because you have so many guys slumping at the same time.
I feel like it's also
But
a mentality thing.
Mhm.
Like, if you put Vientos there and you move Alonso back, when it could have been a thing if you move Alonso up to try and fix it, but now you're like, I don't know. It could
Right?
be
It's tough.
because we already talked about how I think personally that Alonso's pressing because of a contract
Yeah.
year. So you do that, I don't see how that's going to take more pressure off. I think if anything, that's going to make him press more
If you move him up,
if you move
or
him back.
you mean down? If you move him down,
Yeah.
that's fair. But in the same breath, they moved him to 5th in that one St. Louis game, and Carlos Mendoza said, "Oh, it's matchup based, whatever." They scored 6 runs. Alonso, I forget what he did, but I think he got on twice with like a base hit and a walk. I think keep him 5th for now. For now.
Mhm.
It worked in St. Louis. Obviously, they just got shat on in Seattle because they had him 5th in Sunday's game. And the other thing I didn't even talk about is Jesse Winker, who was obviously an option. They tried him, I believe, 2nd, and then they tried him 4th. He hasn't really been hitting since he's been traded to the Mets. He hasn't really played a ton since being traded to the Mets. I think he has about 10, 15 plate appearances, call it. So he hasn't really got going either, which just makes matters worse because you really don't have right now, the hottest hitter is probably McNeil. Besides that, everyone else is slumping. Everyone. So it's extremely tough, but I think Marte can be a jolt. I think Marte can provide something to this offense with him coming back. But it's definitely a conversation, but we can go on it for hours. But quickly move on, and the last thing I want to touch on is the starting pitching. So since the All-Star break, they've been pretty rough around, I'll say. This is not counting Severino's start in, what's it called, in Seattle.
Mhm.
So, and I'm sure it went up, but in 4 games started, Luis Severino has pitched 19 innings to a 5.68 ERA. Jose Quintana, 4 games, 22.2 innings, a 3.97 ERA. David Peterson, 4 games, 21 innings, 3.86 ERA. Sean Manaea, 5 games, 26 innings, 3.38, and Paul Blackburn, 2 games, 12 innings, 1.5. The top 3: Severino, Quintana, Peterson. As a whole, I'm concerned about the starting pitching because you have a lot of guys who are. I know we talked about it in the Bronx with innings limits and innings this, but at the end of the day, you have Severino who has not pitched a ton the past 3 years? Call it 2 years.
4 years, 5 years.
Right. Exactly. He hasn't pitched a ton. He has. Let's see what's his inning total as of right now.
God, go back to this
He's
year. I thought you were saying total.
This year he's at 133 innings. Last year he pitched 89, 2022 102, 2021 6, 2019 12. So what, 12, 18, 20, 200. So he's pitched around 200 innings combined the past 4 years. He's pitched 133 this year. His velocity hasn't. It dipped for one game against the Twins, but in Colorado and Seattle, his velocity was there. But again, the stats 5.68 ERA since the All-Star break. You think he's getting fatigued? I'd say so. And if this is just like a rough stretch, he'll get fatigued eventually. It'll hit him like a brick, I'm sure. And then Jose Quintana didn't pitch a ton last year. See, he is currently at, if my trackpad wants to track, he's currently at 125 innings. He pitched 75 last year. But he did pitch 165 in 2022. So not as long as a layover, but still, did not pitch a ton last year. David Peterson, very similar. He missed a bunch of the year being hurt. And then, with his the hip surgery over the offseason. Manaea was like that swingman in San Francisco. So it's going to be really interesting how this starting pitching performs down the stretch. Because you have a lot of guys that are kind of hitting what may be a wall. Because they just haven't pitched as much. And the struggles are already here. So whether it's a tough stretch or the start of a downfall, to say it, for the starting pitching, I think it's something to keep an eye on. And I think I mentioned it last week or maybe the week before, but say you make it to the playoffs. Say you're in it, wild card 3, whatever. This starting rotation doesn't scare me. Especially Severino not striking out guys as much, not nearly as much. Jose Quintana, a soft tossing lefty. David Peterson, very similar to Quintana. Sean Manaea had two great starts in a row between the Twins and the Cardinals, striking out more than 10. But then he absolutely labored in Seattle. So I don't know. It's a little concerning. I would be concerned about the rotation going forward. And I think Kodai Senga's injury kind of threw a wrench into things because they were planning on going to a 6-man rotation for a lot of these guys' innings. But obviously, between losing Senga and losing Scott, that's not really an option. So it's going to be interesting to see them down the stretch. But, Justin,
Yeah.
you had anything to add before we move on?
You got to fix that rotation. You got to figure out what it is, whether it be a fatigue thing or just whatever, before you get to that big stretch. Because that's not...
Yeah.
That's going to be disastrous if you get to that stretch and that's what's happening, especially if the lineup, like you said, hasn't been producing. That's not a recipe for success.
Exactly. I think going into the year, this team kind of saw their offense as a strength. The rotation was always going to be a little meh. So the lineup needs to carry, so to speak. If the rotation can go 5-6 innings, 4 runs, that's great. But the offense needs to be able to step up and kind of win them games. Because like you said, if the rotation stays the way it is right now, it's going to be disastrous. It's not going to be a fun West Coast trip. So, starting pitching is something to monitor. Lineup needs to figure it out, whether they change it or they don't. Hopefully Starling Marte can provide a little spark when he comes back. But, Justin, if you don't have anything else, I will lead us away. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. As always, follow us on all our social medias at Triboro Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, on YouTube, of course. Subscribe to us there so you don't miss an episode. Follow us on Spotify so you don't miss a audio episode. And as always, we will see you guys next week.
See you guys.